Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Now that we have Week 12 kicked off with Thursday Night Football, we're going to look into the Sunday day games one by one. So if this is not the pregame of the two teams that you're looking for, go look for the other video that should be on the channel. But otherwise, let's get into this one. And with another divisional matchup, we have Atlanta and New Orleans, where New Orleans is favored on the money line with a spread of 1.5 and a total line of 40.5. There's your team seasonal averages. And looking at their rankings, you have Atlanta with a scoring rank of 27, which is pretty bad, but otherwise their offense is about average, except for maybe their tight end rank. Defensively, they have a pretty good allowed passing rank and about average allowed scoring rank, but they're pretty bad at stopping the rush, even though they're really good at stopping the tight ends too. Defensively, they're pretty good at stopping the pass, which flows into also stopping the tight ends. They're about average at stopping their opponents from scoring, and really bad at stopping them from rushing. With New Orleans, you have a pretty bad offense overall, with almost the worst scoring rank, and a pretty bad passing rank, and a really bad rushing rank, but they do try to make up for a little bit with the tight end rank of 10. Defensively, they have a pretty good allowed passing rank at 6, but they're pretty bad at stopping their opponents from scoring, and not too great at stopping them from rushing. Next up with our quarterbacks, we have Kirk Cousins and Tyler Show. Cousins averaging 3.5 fantasy points per game, and Show averaging 8.1. Kirk Cousins has been in and out, but doesn't have too many games. He's had no interceptions this season with no other turnovers, but then Show over here has 2 interceptions with no other turnovers. So then here's their averages for their seasonal data, and neither of them rush enough to actually get a significant portion to Show on these charts. Getting into the running backs, you have Bijan Robinson and Alvin Kamara, with Robinson getting almost 21 fantasy points per game and Kamara getting about 9.7. Bijan has 1 rushing fumble this season, as does Alvin Kamara, but he also has a receiving fumble. And then there's your player averages for the season. And looking at their carry share, with Bijan getting about 61.7% of the team's carry share and 69.1% of the team's receiving yard share. Alvin Kamara gets about 53.8% of the team's rushing carry share and about 50.2% of the team's rushing yard share. For the rushing game in Atlanta, about 30% of it actually goes to Tyler Algier as the backup. And for New Orleans here, it's spread out a little bit because you had Spencer Rattler in, who did rush quite a bit, so I think he still gets about this 13 to 18% here. And then this other large portion here came from the backup, Kendrick Miller, but he's out right now, so you're starting to see some other people fill in. And then getting into our number 1 receivers, you have Darnell Mooney filling in for Drake London and Chris Olave. Mooney averaging 4.8 fantasy points per game this season, and Chris Olave averaging 14.8. Olave's only turnover actually comes from a passing interception, and Mooney has no turnovers this season. And looking at their shares, for Mooney, you have about 15% of the team's target share. And unfortunately, we can't see this receiving yard share, but we can see it in some of the next panels. But I think that's probably closer to about 10 to 11%. And then with Chris Olave, you get about 41.3% of the team's target share and 42.6% of the team's receiving yard share, which is a vast majority of the team. And that's a huge amount even for a wide receiver 1. And that comes off of an average of 6 receptions and 66.4 receiving yards per game. Moving down the wide receiver chain, you have David Sills and Devon Vele. Sills averaging almost 1.5 fantasy points per game, and Vele averaging about 3.5, so there's not much going on between these two, with no turnovers as well, so we'll just go through the averages. And they're pretty small that Sills doesn't even have any target share yet, or receiving share, and Vele, we can't quite see his, but it is quite small. You can go back and see whatever its numbers were, but I would assume this would be about 7%, and this maybe even less than 5%, 4% or so maybe. And now for your tight ends, you have Kyle Pitts and Juwan Johnson, with Pitts averaging 9.6 fantasy points per game and Juwan Johnson averaging 10.8. The only turnover comes from Juwan Johnson with 1 receiving fumble. And so now here's their averages. And looking at their target share, you get 22% of the team's targets go to Kyle Pitts, and 20.7% of the team's receiving yards are gained by Kyle Pitts. Juwan Johnson gets 26.1% of the team's target share and 31.6% of the team's receiving yard share. And that makes Juwan Johnson the 2nd largest receiver on the team right now. And over here for Kyle Pitts, that makes him about the 3rd largest receiver on the team. So this will be an interesting game to see. Their rankings are pretty close across the board, where you have this allowed passing rank of 9 being the best over here, and allowed passing rank of 6 over here. So they both seem like they should be able to shut down each other's passing game. And so it may come down to the rushing game, where you really have this ranking of 13 against this 21. That might be the one that really does it. And then you also have Atlanta with a little bit of a better scoring rank than these scoring ranks over here for New Orleans. So this kind of also all would indicate to me that Atlanta has the advantage in this game and would lean towards them having the win. Although without Drake London, that may be a big factor here. So we'll have to see what they do to get around that and how it turns out. So there's all your data for that game. I hope you found it interesting and useful. And if you did, leave a like and subscribe. And leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.